Hi, everyone. This is Lead with Who You Are. I'm Dia Bondi, and on this show, we explore and discover together what it really means to lead with who you are, and we're doing it with fantastic people like our guest today. In this episode, we're talking with Kelly Twichel, inventor and founder of Access Trax. In this conversation, Kelly shares her personal story that is the driver for all of her impact and the instigating challenge that led to her invention that is now used across geographies to help people with disabilities live with more freedom. You can hear the pride in her voice as she continuously taps the inspiration her clients and customers give her by sharing their experience of her product. If you're someone doing really hard things, this conversation will help you reconnect with the dream and the promise on the other end of the hard work you're doing today. But before we get into today's show, I want to just mention something really cool and important that happened this morning. So in 2019, as many of you may or may not know, I launched Project Ask Like an Auctioneer to help 1 million women ask for more and get it, using everything I learned from a funny impact hobby I picked up in my 40s of fundraising auctioneering for women-led nonprofits and nonprofits that benefit women and girls. And a couple of years into delivering the keynote and workshop for this project, I'm now writing the book. And today, I heard back from my editor. It was her first look at the complete manuscript. It's so perfect because actually I delivered my manuscript 5 weeks ahead of my actual deadline, which is today. And today is the day she got back to me with her feedback. And this is sort of like the top line edit. It's not a line by line edit. It's like, is the structure right? Does this make sense, etc. She returned her notes to me today, and I was, my heart nearly exploded in the best possible way. So the big deal is that she didn't blow up the book. I didn't get we got to go back to start over. This part needs to be removed. We have to rearrange things. This doesn't make sense. But instead, her notes were actually quite minimal and tactical. And the thing that I'm going for in the book, the feeling, the sense of it, the ideas inside of it, how actionable they are, is exactly how she experienced the manuscript. And I am absolutely so proud and thrilled. This is really major, and a major shout out, not just to the work I've done. In fact, that's even the smaller part. It's a big shout out to you. Everyone who worked with me on developing those ideas, because I did not do this in a vacuum. I didn't develop the ideas in the book in a vacuum. Instead, I developed them with you, my listeners, people in the workshop, peers in my network who brought the ideas of Ask Like an Auctioneer, the workshop or the keynote, into their organizations and associations. And I just want to say a big, huge thank you to those of you who have supported all of the development of these ideas, even if it was just texting back and forth with me or doing a walk and talk on the phone or jumping on a call to help me work through an idea or taking a look at some copy or inviting me into your organizations to teach the women that you have an opportunity to elevate and accelerate the ideas of Ask Like an Auctioneer. I have massive gratitude for you. So that's number one. Listen to this. I'm just gushing and the book isn't even out yet. Number two, the book is coming out in 2023. And right now the website for the book is live and there's an opportunity for you to go check out what it's all about and also add your name to the list so you know exactly when the book goes on sale for pre-order, which is going to be actually sooner than later. The book comes out in 2023, but it may actually be up for pre-order sooner than that. So my invitation to you is to go to asklikeanauctioneer.com, check out what's going on with the book and what it's all about. The sizzle reel is on there, which will give you a nice shot of optimism around what kind of impact this project can have, and get on that list so that you can be on this journey with me to empower the asks of people who are using asking as a success strategy and moving toward their goals with confidence and courage. Now on to Kelly Twichel, who is an entrepreneur and a woman who, I would guess, has been doing a little bit of asking of her own to help her reach her goals of building a business that has an incredible impact on people's lives and how they live it. Hey, just a quick reminder. You can subscribe to this show on your podcast platform of choice. We're live nearly everywhere, and you can always listen to the show at diabondi.com. If there's a leader or innovator in your life who is at their shiniest when they lead with who they truly are, please share the show with them and rate, subscribe, and leave us a review. It makes a huge difference in the reach that the show has when you let everyone else know what you love about the show. Thanks so much. Kelly Twichel is an occupational therapist and CEO of the award-winning accessibility startup Access Trax. As an OT student in occupational therapy in 2016, Kelly was inspired by adaptive surfers to co-invent a portable pathway that empowers people of all physical abilities to easily access the outdoors, one of my favorite places. In 2018, Kelly launched Access Trax, which has since served families, nonprofits, and government across 15 countries. Access Trax won the 2020 FedEx Small Business Grant Grand Prize, and in 2021, the assistive tech product was granted a patent. Go Kelly. Kelly's graduated from a number of business accelerators and is currently a Coralist, formerly CEO, venture, which is awesome because I've been an activator in the CEO, now Coralist community. And she's also a Tory Burch Fellow. She enjoys volunteering at adaptive sports events and encouraging the next generation of problem solvers. So, Kelly, I am having you on our show, Lead With Who You Are, because you're doing something fantastic, and I've been watching you from afar for a handful of years now. And I'm always really curious how women, entrepreneurs, people like you, do what you do in a way that seems so aligned to who you actually are. That's what sort of the idea of the whole show here is, that we are at our most powerful when we speak from and lead with who we actually are. You're forging forward with something that matters and seems like it matters to you in a way that is aligned to who you are. So I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we're going to start always with the question that we love to ask, which is, if you were to say in a few sentences who you are, how would you answer that question? Who are you, Kelly Twichel?
I love that question because I feel like it's always evolving, right? The answer is never the same. So today, who I am is I am a passionate individual who happens to live in San Diego. I am the daughter of a woman with a disability. I am an occupational therapist, and I'm an advocate for disability rights. Also, I'm an entrepreneur and an animal lover. So that's who I am today.
Great. And it seems like all of those things are showing up in the work that you're doing now, are they not?
Yeah, absolutely.
So help us understand, what is Access Trax? You know, in your bio, I mentioned what it is and sort of what it does. When we talk about pathways, like, what are we really talking about? So give us a sense of what Access Trax really is.
Yeah. So Access Trax is a lightweight, modular, portable access mat. It is a mat that provides a firm and stable surface, or an access route, if you will, that helps people who maybe have a mobility impairment, or really anybody wheeling over outdoor terrain. Because typically outdoor terrain like sand, grass, gravel, and snow is such a barrier to somebody who is trying to traverse that, specifically if they are using a wheelchair or mobility device, or just, a little bit unsteady on their feet. So that's what the product is. That's what it does. And that's a quick summary.
And so where are the places? And when you say they're modular, I know that they click together. I remember when I first reached out to you about coming on the show, you were like, I'm really slammed right now. It's summertime, and I'm in the garage clicking together mats. So help people understand, they're like a mat that clicks together, which you can make into large pads or long pathways, or in any sort of shape you want, right?
Exactly. So the mats, each square is 3 feet by 3 feet. They're an eighth of an inch thick. They have hinge slits on all 4 sides of these mats, and it allows the connectivity on all 4 sides so that you can create that any configuration. And when I'm talking about, assembling the mats, connecting these mats together, we use industrial grade Velcro. So it's it's simple yet extremely effective. So when you think about Velcro, it's inexpensive, it's extremely durable, it's lightweight, it's flexible. So when these mats are connected, you can actually accordion fold them because of the Velcro, the way that they're connected. So yeah, that's kind of how that works.
And so these places, the places where they might show up, where someone listening might run across an access tract is like in a beach access zone or in a, I don't know, in a state park where you might be hosting a wedding or in like any context where improved accessibility matters.
Yes. So we work with government agencies for ADA compliance. Same thing with, the private sector. You got a business, maybe it's an outdoor restaurant. During COVID, there were so many restaurants that had to only operate outdoors and they had to create accessible space for their patrons. So we had restaurants purchase from us and install that in their gravel, courtyard area. So it's such a wide variety of who we can serve, and it makes it really fun because I never know what the next customer email is going to be.
Yeah, right. The next situation that it's going to
Yes.
be able to solve a problem, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there've been some surprising contexts. So, I mean, when you answer the question, who are you, around being a daughter of a mom with a disability, and the space that you are, an outdoor enthusiast. I understand your life being one of an outdoor enthusiasm. It makes sense that this is something you've created in the world. But can you tell us a little bit about how you actually birthed the idea?
Yes. I love this story. I think, yes. So back in 2016, I was in school for occupational therapy. So I was in grad school where I was going to get my master's and be a clinician, right? Working in the hospitals or wherever. Well, in school, during our second year, we had a class called Assistive Technologies. And in that class, assistive tech, it's such an amazing concept, right? Because anything can be assistive tech. It could be something purchased off the shelf, a software that you download. It could be anything from a wheelchair to your hearing aids to a screen reader to make the print larger. So it just helps a person be more independent and successful in completing a task, really, at the end of the day. So in this class, we were challenged by our professor to create something to help people with disabilities. Period. That's it. And there wasn't specific requirement. However, she did ask if one of the student groups wouldn't mind taking on the idea of how can we help adaptive surfers, so surfers who just happen to use a wheelchair for mobility, how can we help them cross the sand at the beach more independently? Because the other solutions that were out there that we found, it's like a big beach wheelchair where the person in the beach wheelchair, they cannot independently propel themselves. Somebody, usually two people, because it's a big bulky chair, has to push that person. So we wanted something with more dignity, more independence, where the individual could be in the comfort of their own custom mobility device, right, to cross the sand. So my classmate and I said, hey, we'll try to tackle this. And we ended up trying to create a portable mat as opposed to a wheelchair modification. And the reason is that if you modify a wheelchair or any mobility device, it only helps that one person at a time, right? But if you create a portable pathway, then you can use the concept of universal design and you can create something that benefits everybody, regardless of disability. So that's what we did. We started as a school project. My classmate and I said, hey, we'll try to help adaptive surfers. And at that point, we still had no idea this was going to become a business, right? It was a school project. And this was in 2016. It was October 1st, 2016 in Ocean Beach, California. We had our handmade prototype, which was made out of materials from a hardware store like Home Depot.
As you do. Yeah.
Yeah. And we had actually zip tied aluminum rain gutter covers to a roll of plastic chicken wire so that it created sort of traction to prevent the tires from sinking into the sand. That's all we needed, is to prove, can we create traction? And there were 5 adaptive surfers there that day surfing at that competition in their heat. And we got all of them to try it out. And we had only two 10-foot sections of mat. So we had to go over 100 feet, 150 feet to get to the competition zone. So we were sweating by the end of, moving these mats.
So you'd have to like pick one mat up and put it in front of the other one and then get on it. And then, right.
Yep. And so
kind of like a leapfrog setup.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that's what I tell people even now. It's like a leapfrog, and you don't need a mile-long pathway, right? You just need a couple pieces. And we had these people try it, and it wasn't about what the product looked like, because it was, handmade
chicken wire. Yeah.
It wasn't about what it looked like. It wasn't about what it was called. It wasn't about us. It was about the way that the mats made them feel. It was about that independence and that opportunity to say, I can do this. I can cross the sand. And most of them hadn't done it before in their own personal wheelchair. So that was really big. And that moved me to hear also the story of one of the surfers who he had coincidentally broken his back while surfing years ago in Mexico. And he's still a surfer. I mean, that's part of his identity. That's his passion. And so he sustained a spinal cord injury, lower level, meaning that he had pretty good core strength, like his ab strength. And he said, yeah, this is the first time in 10 years that I've been, on the sand in my wheelchair. And, go, well, how do you normally cross the sand to go surfing? Because we know he does it all the time. Oh, yeah, I just drag my body across the sand with my board next to me. That's intense, right? You take a grown individual who says, nope, I don't want somebody to carry me like a child across the sand. I'm going to do this myself. Somebody who values their independence and still, of course, wants to do what they want to do, right? And he's going to drag his body across the sand to go do what he loves. So just getting goosebumps thinking about, like, how can I make somebody's life and somebody's pursuit of happiness easier? How can I break down those barriers?
The word that comes up for me, and I don't know if this is overreaching, but like in hearing that story, is like dignity.
So we wanted to create something that empowered people to have better dignity, to have better freedom, to have equity, to have access, inclusion, all of these things. And so that's the day that when we tested that first handmade prototype, that's when we knew that this is no longer just a school project. This can't go sit in a closet for 20 years and say, wow, remember when? No, like, we needed to be able to make this into an actual manufactured product, right? So that we could scale this and help millions of people around the world have better access to the outdoors.
So in your story, I hear you saying, I had a plan for myself to be a clinician, and I built this thing and saw something that compelled me to go in a different direction.
Yes.
So what was that transition like for you? And I guess the question is, like, was it hard to switch dreams, or was it easy?
Yeah, that is a really great question. So when that school project ended, and of course the dream had just begun of how could we make something big out of this to help people, it was like go time instantly. There was no question for me. It's like the ball started rolling and it was downhill and there was no stopping it, right?
And who was causing that momentum? Like, where did that momentum come from? External, internal, witnessing what was happening?
Yeah, so much of it I do believe is internal, because I have always had this really big drive to push myself, to seeing things around me that need somebody to do some, intervening, whether it be, helping others or just making an impact. And this kind of comes from when I was 12 years old. My mom had a massive stroke. It was 2 weeks before I started high school. And I had a couple friends over for a sleepover. And
I have a 12-year-old. I know exactly what that time of life is. Keep going. Yes.
Right. So you're really just starting to understand yourself as a human, right? And then all of a sudden your world is just turned upside down. So yeah, my mom was in the hospital for a very long time recovering.
Let me go back just for a second. I interrupted you and you said, I was having friends for a sleepover.
Oh, Yeah.
And then I jumped in. What was that part?
I woke up at 6 in the morning, which is not a time you want to wake up at that age, to my dad knocking on my door. And it was like, he was distraught. I'd never seen him look like that before. And he said, she has fallen in the bathroom and she can't get up and she can't talk. And I obviously instantly knew something was wrong. I, threw open my covers and I just like didn't even acknowledge my friends who were like, what? Still waking up, and just run down the hallway to my parents' room. And I just remember going to my mom on the bathroom floor, and I just like cradled her head in my lap and I was stroking her hair and I said, it's going to be okay. And that moment, I just felt this sense of responsibility kick in. I'm 12 years old, right? Like I just started doing my own laundry. And, I just, ever since then, I've felt this intense sense of responsibility. Like, okay, there's so many things in the world that nobody wants to do, right? Oh, that's too niche. Oh, that's too much work. Oh, that's too much to figure out. Oh, not my problem, right? And for me, I've always felt like the one of, well, nobody else is going to do it, so I'm going to do it.
So when you saw the impact that the chicken wire and zip tie version of what is now a patented product called Access Trax, sounds to me like you were so compelled. Maybe it wasn't even changing your dream, but just changing the form that it had.
Yes, and I agree with that because I found occupational therapy because it allowed me to work with people and help them become more independent, be able to do what they want and need to do in their life, just like those who helped my mom after her stroke. And my version of what I'm doing now is occupational therapy in just a different form.
Exactly. That's beautiful. So, okay. So many, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs who are doing really hard things. And, it's always, everybody's telling you how you're supposed to do it or whether something is a good idea to go this way or that way, I'm really curious, the story is inspiring, the product works, and it is inspirational, aspirational, and has a big impact. But along the path, I can't imagine that there wasn't a pull to don't do it that way. That'll never make money. Or like, what were the sort of key themes in the doubters you maybe ran across? And how did you deal with that? Or how have you dealt with that? And do you still deal with it?
Sure. I think very, very early on when it was so close to just still being a school project, and I still had to finish school, right? I mean, that wasn't after school. That was in class. Still had to go out on field work to get my degree and certification and then practice occupational therapy clinically for a while. But at first it was some of my family saying, oh, you need to be careful because you have a lot of student loans to pay back. And if you don't, graduate, I never was going to not graduate, right? That was always in the plan, but it was, okay, I've graduated, I'm practicing clinically, but I'm basically working the equivalent of 2 full-time jobs because I'm working my day job to pay back those loans and get experience. But I'm also every single night trying to work on starting this business. And so obviously that can be very overwhelming and daunting. And so family was telling me, are you sure? Like, is this going to work out? A lot of businesses fail. This is a lot. And I'm not talking about, I'm just starting up another candy shop, right? Like this is a brand new invention. I have to go through a lot of processes and hoops that other business owners might not have to have gone through to get their business going. So yeah, very early on, some of my family was just nervous for me. They didn't want to see me not be able to pay rent and that kind of stuff.
Were you nervous?
Oh, yeah. I was, but there was also this overwhelming, and I don't even know what to call it, like that this is going to work.
Yeah, it's so like you had big reasons to believe.
Hmm.
I hear it like that, and it's really interesting dancing with this boundary of recognizing our own fears and nerves and taking on fears that aren't ours.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you talk about that, of like not taking on the fear that wasn't mine, I knew I was never going to be living on the streets, right? And I'm like, okay, so that's not really the worst case scenario here. So I was really good about staying focused on what do I have in my control. And the way that I did this, yes, I used caution. I didn't just, quit my full-time day job instantly. I did it over years. So I worked full-time clinically for a couple of years. Then I just kind of started to slowly, go, okay, 30 hours a week. Okay, 18 hours a week. Okay, 10 hours a week. So I did it stepwise. And so that was very strategic on my part. I was always very analytical at calculating what is the exact dollar amount that I need to make each month to cover my expenses and, be able to keep moving forward with this business and allowing myself the amount of time that I realistically needed to be able to do that. So, yeah, I just did it over a few years' time. And it was the end of 2020 when I really officially went full time with Access Trax. And I had graduated from grad school in the end of 2017.
So, how along this path, knowing that you may have had path, no pun intended, along this path, knowing that you had folks who were nervous for you, maybe some doubters who were careful now,
Mhm.
where, what did you go to, and what did you rely on to stay connected to the dream you were building?
Well, I think for me, being in the social impact space, it's so easy to just say, well, I have to do this because of the impact that I can make on people's lives, right? And it wasn't just a wish of, I hope I can make an impact. I was seeing it in real time. That is very powerful. When you are able to actually face to face, even get to see the way you're able to make people feel just based on your product or services, it keeps you going through whatever you're going to have to go through. And for me, I quite frequently go to this story of this family that I worked with within, I think, a year or so of launching my company. And I had done a rental where I drove to the beach and set up the pathway for a gentleman who was a teacher, just happened to use a manual wheelchair. And he had some students that were going to come down on the beach. So he wanted to be able to show the students the beach and do it in a beautiful place. At one point, a couple, a man and a woman, were approaching the pathway, the access tracks from the beach boardwalk. And I saw the man who was using a power wheelchair go right up to the mats and stop. And he was really looking at them like, what is this? I kind of approached them and said, yeah, you can go out on the mats, no problem. And he was very hesitant. Oh, are you sure? This is a really heavy chair. And, power chairs could be up to 500 pounds, right? They can be very heavy. And he says, are you sure? And I said, absolutely. So finally, he kind of slowly goes on to the first mat and his face kind of lit up and he just starts flying down that pathway towards the water in his chair. And you could just tell that it was that sense of freedom of like, oh, I haven't been on the sand in a while, right? And I can get closer to the waves. I can get closer to everybody. And then I later found out, talking to his wife, that he had been diagnosed with ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. He didn't know how much time he had left here with us. So he and his wife were very active individuals. They loved camping. They loved the beach. They lived, by the beach. And his wife came up to me later that day and she goes, how much for all of these mats? And they ended up buying the equivalent of that kind of beach setup that we had. And I just remember her being so excited about the possibilities of having that access with her husband for them to continue to do their adventures together. So that day, I ended up having a very real connection with some customers that I got to see face to face. All of the moments, right? The moment of apprehension, the moment of excitement, the moment of freedom, the moment of hope. And I cried happy tears with her. She hugged me and she was just so thankful. Oh my goodness. Those are those moments that that what you're doing is right, no matter how hard it is, because you can give somebody hope and that ability to do what they want to do in this life, no matter how long we have left. And I think the last thing I'll say is that disability is the only club that anyone at any point in their life can join in a second, right? It's any moment I can become disabled. And not that that means that life ends, right? Absolutely not. But it's a very sobering reality. So, why isn't society doing more to make life accessible and inclusive and equitable for people with disabilities? Because we can all get there, right?
Yes. It really hits me. You had this serendipitous moment of getting to witness somebody experiencing Access Trax for the first time. But I can imagine there's opportunities for us all when we're trying to do hard things and have an impact, and running the business side of it can take us away from witnessing that and the impact we're
Mm,
trying to have. Like, we don't have to wait for serendipity to get to witness it and remind us why we're doing it, but we can pursue it.
yeah,
We can
absolutely.
go find it when we know we're in need of reconnecting with the why of the thing that we're doing. And it sounds like that's been a really critical component of keeping your, I don't know, energy toward the thing you're trying to build.
Yes. I think early on, especially as a founder, you're doing unscalable things, right? You are doing the phone calls, you're volunteering at events, you're going to trade shows, you're communicating directly with every customer service email and phone call. And those are actually good things to touch base with beyond the early stages. You always want to be connected in some way, shape, or form to your customers because that can help root you in your passion, in reality, in the feedback, and how you can continue to innovate and improve your product and service throughout the life cycle of your company, not just early on.
So, what do you want people to know about where you and Access Tracks are now?
I think for me, I am really proud that I've been able to patent a product as a female inventor. That doesn't happen, unfortunately, as often as you might think. And also being able to serve customers across 15 countries. I mean, pinch me. That's amazing. As a clinician, I could serve maybe 10 clients a day, usually in my own local neighborhood, right? But as an entrepreneur, you can go beyond borders, you can go beyond cultures, you can help somebody that is in a country you'll probably never travel to in your lifetime. So that's what excites me is the amount of impact I can have. And I'm really proud of what we've been able to do so far. I think in the future, my really big North Star goal, which I'm already actively getting steps to get there, is I want Access Trax to be a partner for the 2028 Paralympics, which will be in LA. So right in practically my backyard. I'm in San Diego. It's in LA. I'm making connections to get there. So that's kind of what I would love people to know.
Well, I've worked on a few Olympic bids, so I might have a few connections that
Oh,
might be
how
useful to you.
exciting.
Yeah, that's great. So for you, what what does it mean for you to lead with who you are?
For me, what that means is staying true to my core values and beliefs and having that show up every day in what I do. So for me, I think I mentioned this, but I really value equality, equity, people to choose what they are and where they go in their life. It's that freedom. And knowing that I can show up and do that in my career is really motivating. So yeah, it's the authenticity and staying true to who I am and having that show up in what I do.
Where can people find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. My company name is Access Trax, and that's Trax spelt with an X. And our website is accesstraxsd.com. So that's Access Trax with an X, and then SD stands for San Diego.
Fantastic. Kelly, thanks so much for being with us on Lead With Who You Are.
Thank you.
Lead With Who You Are is a production of Dia Bondi Communications. Scored, mixed, and produced by Arthur Leon Adams III, and executive produced by Mandy Miranda. You can reach out to us at hello@diabondi.com or leave us a voicemail at 341-333-2997. You can like, rate, share, and subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Go to diabondi.com for show notes and to learn about all it is that we do to help you speak powerfully and lead with who you are.